While the country of Mexico enjoyed the spotlight of the World Cup and the crazy amount of profit that they made, the observer joins the families of thousands of missing people whose family fear that they have been murdered or forcibly recruited into the powerful criminal organizations of Mexico. Just south of Guadalajara, in the Mexican state of Jalisco, a platoon of soldiers set up a checkpoint perimeter on the outskirts of a rundown, nearly silent neighborhood. The purpose of the checkpoint is the following. The last time Hector Flores came to this part of Jalisco looking for his missing son, two cartel lookouts came out and boldly told him to leave, threatening him. This time around, him and his group of citizens who, like him, are suffering under the same tragedy of losing a family member due to the criminal organizations. Hector's group goes by the name La Luz de Esperanza. They came back to their neighborhood looking for Hector's missing son. This time around, they came back with an armed convoy and with more force. Hector Flores, like anyone in Mexico who has a missing family member, still holds on to hope that his son might be alive somewhere. But he says the following. Authorities told me that if he is dead, he could be in this neighborhood. He says, looking at the piles of half-burned trash, with an incredible sad look, he holds onto hope that the piles of trash are not his son's ashes. The son of Hector Flores is one of more than 130,000 missing people that are registered in Mexico, and no state has more cases of missing people than Jalisco. The home of Jalisco New Generation Cartel, who is famous for forcefully recruiting individuals into their organized crime. CDMx is also one of the most powerful cartels, if not the strongest right now in Mexico and in the world. The city buzzes with anticipation for the tournament, and the city cannot wait. Everyone is hyped. Public spaces have been beautified and decorated with giant soccer balls, and so on. Freshly painted murals adorn the streets. And when South Korea faced the Czech Republic, 50,000 fans filled Akron Stadium to watch them. But if visitors took a moment and saw their surroundings in Guadalajara, they might have noticed details that contrast with the euphoria that they were facing in the World Cup. Panic buttons on the street corners or walls covered with posters of missing people, as well as small protests of people looking for their missing loved ones, could be seen in the city of Guadalajara, Jalisco. The reality Jalisco is trying to give the public is far from the one that is actually lived there. And if people are tuned into the news, they might have seen that on February of this year, the headlines that Jalisco, the same state that was due to host the World Cup in a couple of months, was bringing headlines that they were in heavy gunfire. When the state of Jalisco was paralyzed by cartel gunmen. This event happened after the Mexican army killed the CDMx leader Nemesio Ceguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho. His gunmen exchanged gunfire with soldiers across the state and terrorized the citizens, leaving the streets deserted as people sheltered in their homes. Roughly 70 people died in those clashes. The fact that the cartel could paralyze the whole city shows its powers, said Denise Montiel, co-director of CPAD, a human rights organization in Guadalajara. So, the cartel reasserted control and its leaders focused on succession. Within days of the clashes of cartel members and the Mexican government, the city seemed to return to normal, as if nothing had happened. The government had to do something quick and assure FIFA that the city of Guadalajara was indeed safe to host those matches, including the match of South Korea versus the Czech Republic on Thursday, June 19. These outbursts that the CJNG did are rare in the city of Guadalajara, as it is a very rich state, the third largest economy in Mexico. CJNG controls Guadalajara in other forms of violence and scare tactics though. In Jalisco, the disappearance of someone can mean many things with different outcomes. Perhaps the victim is dead, and the cartel chose to bury him or burn the body to destroy the evidence. Or perhaps they were forcefully recruited into the organization of CJNG and are now fighting in one of the most countless conflicts with other criminal groups across the country. It's that uncertainty of not knowing what happened to their loved ones that haunts those families. On the road to Tlajomulco de Zúñiga, an hour south of Guadalajara, colonial architecture and modern office buildings give away endless rows of abandoned houses. About a decade ago, there was a construction boom there, but the housing developments ended up isolated and lacking basic services. Then the Jalisco New Generation Cartel arrived there. Between December of 2018 and February of 2025, according to official data, 1,882 bodies were found in 186 clandestine graves across the state of Jalisco. Nearly half of those graves were in Tlajomulco, with soldiers posted to deter any interference from cartel members. Hector Flores and the collective that he is a part of go to work with pickaxes, and they also shove a thin metal rod and they jab it into the ground to see if it sinks. That process helps them identify where they will dig. If the metal sinks a lot, that means that the soil is soft and may have been disturbed recently. When they bring out the metal rod, they take turns smelling it and determine whether or not they will dig there to look for their loved ones that are missing. The son of Hector Flores disappeared on May 18 of 2021. Shortly after, Hector co-founded the collective, which today has 500 members, several dozens who regularly take part in field searches. Most of those in Tlajomulco are women, mothers and grandmothers of Guadalajara. One wore a knee bracelet and many struggle against the heat, but they still search for their loved ones, or others simply help the cause. However, Hector seems to be tireless. He only stops digging to smoke, and even then finds it hard to stay still. Hector was studying to become a lawyer when he was young. However, life hit him like it does to everyone, and that led him to become a chef and work in a kitchen. Daniel, his son, worked in the same kitchen with him as a waiter. However, after his disappearance, his father, Hector, has now returned to the kitchen and now dedicates his time looking for his son, Daniel. To be honest, since what happened to my son, I found it very hard to reconnect with that, he says. Hector and Daniel's mother separated long before his son's disappearance, and Hector has no other children. His only child was taken from him forcefully. Hector, however, does have a grandchild, a daughter that Daniel left behind after he disappeared. Daniel's wife was pregnant and actually saw how they took her husband away from her forcefully at their house. The trauma and stress of the investigation led her to leave Guadalajara. She was in fear for her life. She had to leave with the girl, and I haven't been able to reach out to her, Hector said. I don't know where they are. As for his son Daniel, Hector got a lead a month after the disappearance. Someone contacted him and anonymously said to him that his son had been held in a safe house in Guadalajara with him for 10 days. They said the cartel was killing everyone who refused to join the organization and go to a recruitment camp outside the city. Hector says that his son agreed to go and was forcefully recruited into the organization. One of those training camps where they will take these people that they were forcefully recruited was Rancho Izaguirre, which in this channel we have discussed the tremendous horrors people lived inside that ranch. That ranch was discovered last year by members of another collective who dedicates themselves doing the same as Hector's collective. The collective, led by Indira Navarro, did the discovery of what appeared to be an obstacle course and a shooting range, but in that training camp, they also had ovens dug into the ground with burnt remains and a chilling sight of a pile of hundreds of shoes. It became a scandal in Mexico. At first, authorities downplayed the discovery, but how can you really downplay such horrible discovery? But people who passed through the ranch and lived in that community knew what happened inside that ranch, and they contacted Navarro, and some are now testifying in court about the existence of Rancho Izaguirre and the horrors that they lived inside of it. How they had to kill or be killed. They described the kidnappings, the training, and the things they were forced to do. Navarro says, "It's all real. This ranch is not a horror fictional story. In fact, Rancho Izaguirre is one of many similar training camps that the Cartel Jalisco New Generation has set up in the state of Jalisco and the neighboring states around it. Those camps are often identified by collectives looking for missing people or their missing loved ones, since it seems like the government are not that proficient at doing their job, which is finding missing people. So these people make their own collectives and dedicate their time doing the job that the police should be doing." No one knows the true scale of the phenomenon and the conflict that the CJNG has in its future, but the organization of Cartel Jalisco New Generation has the constant need to replenish its ranks and recruit people inside the organization, especially young men, teens, and even children. There are currently 16,000 people registered as missing in the state of Jalisco alone, but the real number in reality could be higher than that. Some families may not report the disappearance of their loved ones if they suspect their relatives are involved in some sort of crimes. They may also fear the cartel or any sort of retaliation, or simply think it wouldn't be any good or it wouldn't benefit them at all, since all the citizens in Mexico have given up hope to the corrupt government and system set in Mexico. It's almost like the Mexican citizens have pressure to forget. It's terrible The same people who took our children are the same ones that we have to trust to carry out the investigation, says Liliana Mesa, mother of Maximiliano Romero Mesa, a missing person. Dozens of arrests have since been made linked to the Rancho Izaguirre campment, but it became clear that local authorities had known about the camp's existence for years and had allowed it to operate. Everyone living nearby knew about the place, said Dr. Rogelio Barba Alvarez, a criminology expert. The silence is extraordinary, and it was obviously bought. A UN committee went further recently, stating there was indications that the state security forces were systematically implicated in disappearances in Mexico, forced disappearances, and that it could constitute crimes against humanity, and in my opinion, they should do it. No one should be above the law ever. In part, this is a huge reflection and realization of the horror that the militarization of the so-called war on drugs, which began with the ex-president Felipe Calderón when he sent the army to confront the cartels back in 2006. This led entire units trained for war, not for public order, to crack down using extrajudicial methods, detaining suspects without warrants, interrogating them, and in some cases even disappearing them. This led to all-out chaos, and that's where we are right now in Mexico, after the war on drugs was declared in 2006. But it also reflects the collusion between state and organized crime groups. There has been numerous cases in Jalisco in which state security forces are from protecting the citizens they swore oath to protect, but instead have been complicit in the victimization of such citizens. This does not only happen in Jalisco, though this happens all throughout Mexico, but it's more common in areas where criminal groups are powerful and the state is weak. Places, for example, like the rural areas of Jalisco. The Mexican government rejected the UN's report and said it was biased. But when Hector's son disappeared, agents from the state prosecutor's office got involved, and when Maximiliano Romero's Mesa, son of the collective co-founder Liliana Mesa, also disappeared, it was the municipal police who responded to these cases, and there are not an exception. It's terrible, says Mesa, looking at the security forces around her. The very people who took our children are the ones we have to trust to investigate. Why haven't they arrested anyone? If the authorities really wanted to investigate, there would be consequences already. In reality, families often investigate on their own the cases of their missing loved ones, taking a great personal risk as well as a cartel can threaten them or even worse, take their lives away. According to Article 19, a human rights organization, at least 44 of them have been killed or disappeared since 2010. And we shouldn't even have to do this, Mesa says. We should be watching the state do it. Mesa was interrupted by the arrival of an elderly woman. She had seen the convoy arrive and wanted to ask for help. Her stepson had just gone missing, but she was afraid to report it herself. Discreetly, she pointed to the local police. They were involved, she said, giving Mesa the address of the house where the Jalisco cartel had hidden her stepson and from which she said he had never came out of. People know, Mesa said to the elderly woman as she walked away. It's an open secret, she said as well. The address led to an abandoned two-story house painted navy blue on an eerily silent street. As the convoy arrived, someone whistled and a minibus sped away. A neighbor asked if she knew who owned the house. She stared blankly and shrugged her shoulders at her. A block away was a school with dozens of children playing on a vacant lot. As they went inside the house was almost empty, but the lights worked and there was also a Wi-Fi modem inside. On the table inside the house, there was soda bottles, still fizzy, and crumbled potato chip bags. The elderly woman had also told her that there was always teenagers coming and going in the house. On the wall, a graffiti said the following: "We are born to die. Whoever lives, lives on borrowed time." And above it, it had the letters NG, Nueva Generación, the cartel's abbreviation. At the back of the house was a room with tiled floor and a patch of bare earth on one side. The group began digging frantically, filling the air with dust. Hector Flores pulled down his mask now and then, breathing deeply through his nose and hoping to smell bodies. As they dug, they found broken pipes, suggesting someone else had dug there since the house was built. Then they found a sock inside where they were digging. They buried them very deep under the houses, Hector said. We found bodies 4 meters down, but at 1.5 meters we hit solid ground. The energy drains out of the room. Hector sits at the edge of the hole, head down. His chest is heavy as he breathes. His tattooed forearms covered in sweat and dust as well. There are a few seconds of silence as everyone turns inward. Then Hector stands up and says, "All right, let's continue." And that's the end of this tragic, very, very sad story. Hector is looking for his missing son. The government doesn't help them at all. If anything, they're never gonna help him. It's really an impuned country down there. It's full of impunity, full of people who are above the law, who feel above the law, and they actually are above the law in some cases. It's really sad. Hopefully, at some point, he gets some peace in his mind, in his heart, and hopefully he gets back a little bit back to his normal life. But that's it for today, guys. Stories from Mexico. This story almost made me cry, guys. It's sad. It's super sad.